Hey, everybody, good morning. Well, almost afternoon at this point. Before I get started, once again, if you like this video, or these videos rather, hit the like button. If you want to see more videos and content like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the bell icon so that you get notified when I post new videos. Anyway, so we'll jump right into it. This is something that amongst all the other things that I talk about on this channel, or I have talked about on this channel in the last week, month or so, I didn't really address this. And that is, how do I feel about what's really going on with law enforcement in this country, and specifically Immigration and Customs Enforcement? Well, let's jump into it. Let me give you my take on all of it. Let's start with just law enforcement in general. Over the past, we'll call it 5 years or so, and we won't go back any farther than that. We won't focus specifically on things happening in the last couple of years. We'll just say over the last 5 years. I think it's become pretty clear that law enforcement agencies have made a bad name for themselves, pretty badly, through a variety of different acts, a variety of different refusing to take accountability and responsibility for things. And I'm going to go ahead and say this. That's built into the fundamental principles that law enforcement in this country was built on. I'm sorry to have to be the bearer of bad news to say that to people, but it was built on this. Hey guys, just wanted to interject on this part of the video real quick. As you can see, it's a different setup. I'm at my house in more of a rural place in California for a couple of days for some work up here. It's been perpetuated. There's been refusal to change anything about it for so long. And the amount of ingrained ideology that's come from this is so deep that anyone's going to have a hard time trying to break through it. Cops in general, aren't bad people, okay? And a lot of them are doing a job that no one else wants to do. And, rightfully so. Why would you want to do the job? Look at the way things are going on. Like, why would you want to do anything when it comes to law enforcement? When the public disrespects you the way that it does. And again, I'm not defending anything that bad cops have done over the past 5 years, okay? I'm not defending any of it. I'm just pointing out, why would anyone want to do the job when everyone hates you? Truth be told, when I was in my 20s, I wanted to be a police officer. I went as far as going to community college and taking criminal justice, principles of the justice system, criminal law, and even criminal investigation. I think I completed the criminal law class, and that's it. I didn't stick with any of the rest of it, because I got, distracted with other things. And what's interesting is that at one point I had told myself, I'm glad I didn't. I don't actually think that. I kind of feel like somebody like me and multiple people like me could have and could still in the future change the system for the good and get people to start realizing how bad it really is and how bad agencies really look from the outside. I really do. But anyway, that's a tangent for another video. This is really my opinion of law enforcement in general. I think they've made a bad name for themselves. I think there's too many bad apples that and I've said this before, they become law enforcement officers for the wrong reasons. I'm going to refrain from getting into those reasons for both time and just, discretion in a certain way, but they do it for the wrong reasons. And there's a lot. And then there's a lot of guys that just do it because it's part of the family. Maybe they're fifth generation police. Both. Being a police officer is one of those things where you work so much that having a relationship with somebody who's outside of that work can be difficult. So a lot of families, are law enforcement families where both mom and dad are police. Kids become police. Speaking of police, there's a highway patrolman that just really passed me while I'm driving and talking to you guys here. And then there's a guy flipping someone off. I don't know if he's flipping the cop off, but that was actually really interesting. I have not experienced that thing before. Oh yeah, this dude is straight up in a Miata with Nevada plates, is flipping off a CHP officer, like driving with his middle finger up. Oh, these clowns, man! I swear to God, this is some clown ass behavior. Anyway, we will ignore that happened, and we'll go back to the topic. So my real thing, more than anything else, is the bad reputation, the fact that you have families of police, and unfortunately, I have to point out that actually contributes negatively to the occurrences of issues, because what happens is you have families that protect bad police who do bad things, who hurt people, who are serial abusers. Again, I'm going to leave that at that. I'm not going to get any more to that. But here's another piece of it, Pear. You also have the Fraternal Order of Police, which is the police union that is national, that for the longest time, and it's changed over the last couple of years. It has changed over the last couple of years, okay? But it used to be they would defend anything. They would defend cops who beat their significant others and get away with it because the FOP would just be like, oh, well, he's a great officer. Literally, that's what would happen. They would also defend brutality. They would defend all kinds of other really egregious acts. And they still do, but they definitely don't do it as much as they used to. And I'm not sure why that is. I'm going to be honest. I don't know. I could come up with some theories, that they've started to be held accountable for it. And people who contributed money to the FOP maybe stopped doing it as much because of those things. Definitely, I think that could be part of it. But again, it just really comes down to they made themselves look really bad. Okay, so now let's go ahead and shift onto specifically federal immigrations and customs enforcement officers, or agents. I believe agents is the correct word because they're federal. Until our current president, in his second term, I'm 42 years old, and I don't remember hearing about ICE agents in the media so much ever in my entire life. You know, most of the time they are reserved for border towns where you have people who try to jump gates and fences and stuff like that, or are trying to smuggle things through a border crossing. You know, that's most of the time when you hear about it. But in the last year, ever since our current president, you know, and again, I want to also say something, you know, the not my president thing. Well, you can say that all you want, but the fact is the man is president. I don't like it, believe me, I don't, but it's the truth. Anyway, I won't get off on that tangent. The point of it, ever since this man has been in the second term, he's ramped up these enforcement efforts. And while I think most people can agree, none of us want criminals coming in our country, especially none of us want criminals in our country in general. But guess what? Crime is a human condition. But specifically, nobody wants criminals coming from south of the border over here to commit crimes and not be held accountable for stuff, right? Of course, none of us want that. But let's be honest with ourselves. How many of the people that were actually arrested by Immigration and Customs Enforcement just in the last 3 months alone were actually criminals and were actually illegals? There are reports of U.S. citizens being arrested. And, you know, the agency, under a nameless person who I'm not going to get into, might have to do a video on her later, but everybody knows who I'm talking about. Oh, it was a mistake. Oh, the name matched. Really? How are we at a place where federal law enforcement agencies can screw up this badly and not be held accountable for it? That's the only thing I have to say about that. But the question stands: how many of the arrested were actually, or are actually, illegal immigrants who have committed crimes? Because we know, and I know there's going to be a lot of people who are going to argue with this, and so please put your comments down below about how you feel about this. Being in the country illegally is actually a civil issue. It's not a criminal issue. It's something that has to go through a court. Okay? Believe me when I tell you, growing up in California, a border state, a topic of conversation my whole life has been, do we need to close our border in order to stop people from coming in here illegally? Because, oh, they're a burden on the system. Really? Really? Where? Please. This is part of something that I'm going to have to tangent on and get into a little bit. Please show me where illegal immigrants are actually a burden on the system. Like the system that you benefit from. A lot of these folks who come here and don't do it the legal way, they get jobs and they pay into a system that they'll never benefit from. Because illegal immigrants do not get social services. I would say in a state like California, there are probably social programs that might be taxpayer funded that illegal immigrants can take part in. But none of those things are subsidized 100% by taxes, bro. Medi-Cal is not subsidized 100% by taxes. You still have co-pays when you go into a Medi-Cal situation. They're very low and affordable for most people, but these people, they're going to pay money still. And so the illegal immigrants are getting welfare and all this other shit. The math don't math, my friend. The math does not math. So whatever it is that you're talking about, that you think that these people think is happening, it isn't. It's just another reason for poor white Americans to have a scapegoat for their poorness and the fact that they're miserable. It just is. Anyway, that was a tangent I had to go on in this video a little bit. But let's go back to the opinion. I don't think that ICE agents should be in American cities at all, the way that they are right now. I think that there's enforcement tactics that need to be done in order to stop certain things from happening. I agree, in any situation. But right now what's going on is they're just rounding up whoever they don't like. Okay? The facts is that ICE as an agency, it hired 7,000 new agents at the end of 2025, 2,000 of which quit because of the hate or whatever reasons that they quit. They quit. So you really only added 5,000 agents, which for a country as vast as the US with 337 million people in it is not a lot. And I don't know the percentage of undocumented folks in this country, but the bottom line at the end of the day is that's not a lot. Now, if you ask me the question of should we harm these people, no, we should not. They are humans just like us. And we don't do ourselves any favors by promoting the harming of people. I myself can get very emotional, feel a lot of things, say a lot of things, but you know what I started to do over the last year? I started to put that to work for me, where it gets me to think clearly about something and think, these are other human beings we're talking about here. We start doing things like threatening people and things like that. How are we better than them? In order for us to be able to have an argument, we have to be better. We have to do better. Because otherwise we solve nothing. And this is something that I have to tell myself on a daily basis still. But I tell other people all the time, we got to be better. You want to enact change? There's other methods of doing that. Court is a great one. There's lawsuits, all kinds of lawsuits against the ICE, against the Trump administration, as well as against ICE. And the court will see those through. I'm not going to predict what's going to happen. I'm not going to say whether I think, it will make any difference or not, but I'm going to say that it's happening. It's going to happen. There's going to be court cases on this stuff. And that this is one of the ways to do it. The other way to do it is to stop voting people in who agree with this stuff that's happening. Number one. Number two, find out whoever, if you don't already know, this is one thing I always tell everybody. This is something that I was told probably in my 20s by people I trusted. Always know who your rep is. Always know. And do not feel shy to call their office, leave voicemails, send letters, send emails. Hammer their inboxes with your opinion until they're forced to look at it, until they start realizing that 50,000 other people in their district also feel the same way about something. This is something that not enough people are doing. When I feel really passionate about a topic, you better believe I email mine. Okay? You better believe it, because I do. Okay? It happens all the time. I'm very religious about it. But for me, it's always specific issues. I'm not just going to be like, oh, you shouldn't be supporting this person. I'm like, it's specific issues, because at the end of the day, they're going to support who they support. Okay? So this is something that I find extremely important to always tell people. Go hammer your rep's inbox with your opinion about a situation. This is a perfect example of one where you should. I just sent an email 2 days ago to mine about how, we need to stop supporting this. Now, again, I live in California, a place that already isn't supporting this. So, don't really have to do much there. There is still more work to do, but at least I live in a place where they don't support it. So, there's where I'm at with that. I will elaborate a little bit more on kind of the way that I feel about the enforcement actions themselves. And specifically, again, I already did a video on the woman that was killed in Minneapolis, and I already told you that it didn't need to happen. It didn't. I'm going to elaborate on that. It did not need to happen. It was very unnecessary. It's tragic. A daughter lost a mother. A wife lost a spouse. Why is that a good thing? And people are celebrating this as a good thing. And okay, I'm going to go ahead and go into something here. Okay, I think this is very important. There's a lot of rhetoric out there right now. I've seen a lot of memes. I've seen a lot of people actually posting stuff. And most of this stuff is on very conservative groups on Twitter or X, and Facebook, where it's like, so the left is allowed to celebrate Charlie Kirk's death, but when we do it about somebody who tried to run over an ICE agent and got killed, we're demonized for it? Okay, I'm going to laugh. And I'm going to partially laugh because who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death besides a bunch of morons who I personally don't want to have anything to do with? A lot of people said they didn't feel bad for him because he talked his way into death in a very large way. I'll let y'all make the decision on what that means because I'm pretty sure we all know what I'm talking about. Charlie Kirk was a podcaster and a grifter. Do I need to say any more? Who made millions of dollars off of debating college students about a variety of topics that he was passionate about. That's a noble thing. The grifter part's not. I won't get into his widow and the situation there, but I think we've all saw the things about that. But at the end of the day, all people said was, why am I going to feel bad for a guy who absolutely 100% did not support who I am, specifically as an LGBT person or a person of color? Why would you expect somebody to feel bad for somebody who thinks they shouldn't exist? I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why would you have that expectation? Anyway, I'm saying I never saw anyone act okay, that's not true. There was one video of some 20-something white kid jumping around, acting celebratory when Kirk was killed. Jesus, when I saw this, I didn't believe it at first. I have let myself become so skeptical of news that I'm like, no, it's not real. It's fake. And then I started to find out very quickly that it wasn't fake. And the first thing that I said on social media was, I didn't like the guy, but that doesn't mean he deserved to die. Any reasonable person with a soul is going to say exactly what I said. Whether you're a liberal, a conservative, or whatever, we should all feel the same way about that. The guy did not deserve to die. And in no way am I going to celebrate that he's dead. But there's a lot of ways that I can say, man, you kind of... Your gun rhetoric. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a huge Second Amendment supporter. I think I've said that in other videos. I own guns. I shoot guns. I train. I believe in the Second Amendment. But saying the stuff the dude said and then getting popped, ooh, it's a little bit too ironic if you know what I mean, you know? And at the end of the day, it's like this woman who was killed by ICE agents, I have seen more celebratory stuff than I ever saw with Charlie Kirk. And here's the problem with it, because the rhetoric of the Charlie Kirk supporters is you not feeling bad is celebratory. Huh. How do you figure that? Me not feeling bad about something when somebody gets popped is me celebrating it. When y'all, when I say y'all, I mean conservatives, are actively on internet celebrating the death of this woman. Oh, it's a FAFO moment. Oh, this and oh, that. When we said some of the same shit, like, yeah, Charlie Kirk is kind of a FAFO moment for sure. But what did he fuck around with? He didn't. And so I personally wouldn't say that because it's not the same thing. The guy was speaking at an event and was capped. Okay? But I see active celebration of this woman's death, which is unacceptable, you know, which is inappropriate and wrong. And you know, it really shows where your moral center is when you do stuff like that. And then you want to accuse the other side of celebrating Charlie Kirk's death when, like I said, I've seen maybe one example of that, and I condemn it. I condemn it. So anyway, I'm going to cut this one off here. Thanks for watching. Once again, if you like the video, smash that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. Everybody have a great Tuesday.